name's Ava. I'm a Scorpio.
No. What's your last name?
Oh, Ava Combs.
What's your other last name?
Ava Baroni.
I need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes.
The what?
All the boxes left over from the pizza.
It's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody of him. He signed to Usher.
Signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when he did his first album. I did Usher's first album.
But I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild.
Dad, now, would you ever send your kid to Puffy camp?
Hell no.
Just when it seemed the conversation around Diddy could not get any stranger, a new name suddenly slid into the spotlight and sent the internet into a frenzy. Rumors began swirling that his so-called adopted daughter may be connected to a leaked tape, and online speculation quickly pushed the story into even darker, more unsettling territory, with people wondering whether this was merely another viral accusation or the beginning of something far bigger. And that is where the mood shifts, because once a story starts crossing into names and circles, the public already associates with secrecy, influence, and unanswered questions. Curiosity turns into scrutiny almost overnight. Still, to understand why people are reacting this strongly, you have to go back to 2020, when Diddy casually appeared on Instagram Live and introduced this young woman to millions as family.
Desserts for our bonfire tomorrow.
Okay.
Because, and everyone that was invited has to bring something, and then our thing that we had to bring was dessert. And then everyone else, they bring food and drink.
Mm-hmm.
And
Whip that, whip it. Do you like it?
Saying he had adopted her with almost no context, no real backstory, and no attempt to explain how any of it had happened. At first glance, it looked spontaneous, but the longer people watched, the more the moment started to feel strangely rehearsed and oddly unstable beneath the surface. When she began speaking, she did not start with where she was from or how she knew him. Instead, she opened with her zodiac sign, which instantly made the whole exchange feel disconnected from the kind of grounded introduction most people would expect in a genuine family moment. Then, almost as soon as the conversation drifted into uncertain territory, Diddy cut in, redirected the energy, and began smoothing over the awkwardness in a way that many viewers felt looked less like affection and more like cleanup.
My name's Ava. I'm a Scorpio.
No. What's your last name?
Oh, Ava Combs.
What's your other last name?
Ava Baroni.
Ava Baroni Combs? Yes, it was breaking news. Diddy adopted a white child.
That small interruption might have seemed minor on its own, but in hindsight, it became one of those details people could not stop replaying. The tension only thickened when she casually mentioned having been on the streets before he brought her in, only for him to immediately jump ahead of the narrative again, speaking rapidly, insisting she had loving parents, and even comparing the situation to celebrity adoptions like Madonna's.
I want you to tell them the story about how I adopted you. But you still have beautiful parents but you're my child also. But please tell the story.
Yes.
Ava, that's a little bit borderline suspect. I don't want nobody, we want to get it clear. I adopted you like Madonna adopted kids and everybody else adopted kids. Charlize Theron, everybody that's ever adopted Sandra Bullock. I adopted you because I felt that you could, enjoy also having a black parent.
I always come over.
Yes. And it's Ava Baroni Combs.
That comparison did not calm anything down. If anything, it pulled even more attention to the segment because Madonna's adoption history has long been debated online, and invoking that example only gave people another loose thread to tug on. Then came the discovery that really changed the temperature. Internet users dug up older photos appearing to show her around his family years before that live, looking noticeably younger, which opened up a much more uncomfortable question about why she was being presented as someone newly brought into the fold. Suddenly, the timeline no longer felt blurry. It felt contradictory. And once people noticed that, they started asking a question that still has not gone away.
Has anyone seen Ava Baloney? The little white girl that Diddy adopted. Where did he get her from? Was she the pick of the litter? Those poor babies. You know, people should go back and do a little research in the 90s, especially in the mid-late 90s and early 2000s. The diddler used to throw white parties. Bangkok and Dubai and in Morocco. Prostitution is legal. He's been snatching up little kids for decades. I also heard that he was banished from...
If this was all so simple, why did the explanation sound like it was being invented in real time? Even stranger, after all the attention, she seemed to disappear from view, with no steady stream of family posts, no visible presence, and no clear continuation of the role she had just been introduced into. In celebrity culture, people appear and vanish all the time. But this felt different, almost like a chapter had been opened too publicly and then closed too fast. And that is exactly why this moment keeps resurfacing, because the deeper people look, the less it feels like a random live stream memory, and the more it resembles the first crack in a story nobody fully understood at the time.
Do not entertain none of this nonsense and nothing over the phone. I'm gonna need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes.
The what?
All the boxes left over from the pizza. All the boxes.
Okay.
Make sure you recycle the plastic like we talked about.
Now hold on for a second, because this is the exact point where the narrative stops feeling scattered and starts lining up in a way nobody really anticipated. Out of nowhere, that leaked phone call began circulating again, the one people claim surfaced during the height of the investigation, where Diddy is heard speaking to his son, allegedly Christian Combs, casually mentioning pizza boxes and reminding him to recycle the plastic. On the surface, it sounds almost laughably normal, like the kind of random, everyday conversation nobody would think twice about. But context changes everything, and once you place that call inside a moment where legal pressure was reportedly building and properties were under scrutiny, the tone of that conversation starts to feel off. Because when everything around you is tightening, do you really make a call like that just to talk about leftovers?
The situation just keeps getting worser and worse. One of the dock workers that is on the port strike has come out and stated that they're not only striking because of being overworked and underpaid, but because they're sick and tired of hearing coming in the port screaming on cargo containers.
I don't think the workers in the port strike were wanting more money because of the work that they were doing. I think they wanted more hush money to keep them quiet about what they were bringing into the ports. Diddy's house is on Star Island, which is right next to the Miami port. They saw some things, and they were not okay with it.
Or is there something else hidden between the lines? That single question is what pulled people deeper. And once it did, the interpretations started multiplying fast. Online discussions began reframing those words entirely, suggesting that pizza boxes and plastic could be placeholders, coded language pointing toward items that needed to be handled quickly, quietly, and without attention. It wasn't proof of anything, but it was just enough ambiguity to keep the conversation alive. And once people start decoding, they rarely stop at the first layer. Then attention shifted beyond the call itself and toward the physical spaces connected to him, with users mapping out properties and noticing how some of them sat unusually close to shipping zones, cargo docks, and freight storage areas. That detail alone might mean nothing, but in a story already filled with unanswered questions, it became another piece that people couldn't ignore. And then came the whispers. Unverified, fragmented accounts allegedly tied to workers in those areas, describing moments that felt unsettling enough for some to walk away from their jobs entirely rather than stay involved. Whether those accounts hold any truth or not, the emotional weight of that idea stuck with people.
So check this out, yo. Justin, you ever seen the movie 48 Hours? Right now, he's having 48 hours with Diddy, him and his boy. They're having the times of their lives, like where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody of him. He signed to Usher.
I'm signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full crazy.
I'm going crazy.
Crazy.
Because walking away from steady work usually means something felt deeply wrong on a personal level. But here's where everything starts looping back in a way that feels almost too precise to overlook. After that call began making rounds, conversations shifted toward one question: who would even have access to something that private? And somehow, the same name kept resurfacing in speculation: Ava, the same figure who had quietly vanished after that strange introduction years earlier. No confirmation, no hard evidence, just timing that felt difficult for people to ignore, especially when you line up her disappearance, the sudden resurfacing through that live, and then this leak appearing not long after. It creates a pattern that feels intentional.
But again, see, he's in cahoots with Epstein. And then
was he in cahoots with Epstein, or was it just a similar type of an operation?
No, they were friends.
Really?
Yeah, because Epstein had on Miami as well, that really private, rich estate in Miami. So they were all in cahoots as well. But
even if no one can fully explain it, and when people started digging into the last known glimpses of her presence, another detail emerged that added even more tension. She wasn't being seen around Diddy himself, but rather in proximity to his sons, Justin and Christian. That alone might not raise alarms under normal circumstances, but given that both names have been mentioned in various online discussions tied to broader allegations surrounding Diddy's circle, it added a layer of unease that's hard to shake. Because at that point, the question stops being about one moment or one clip and starts becoming something much bigger. Who was really seeing what behind the scenes? And why does every road seem to lead back to the same small group of people?
I was a party favor.
What does that mean?
I was a party favor. I was somebody you could take off the table.
So you're telling me they set
a set you
on a table, like when you go to a birthday party and they have gift bags for everybody that comes that have candy and toys in them, and they set them on the table. So you're telling me at the freak off parties, they put on the table instead of gift bags, and then people can do what?
Take you off the table and have.
What makes this even harder to ignore is that the conversation doesn't actually begin with that leaked call. It stretches much further back into moments that at the time didn't seem as heavy as they do now. Christian Combs has faced his own wave of online allegations, but even that feels like a continuation rather than a starting point, because people have been revisiting older clips and interviews that suddenly carry a different weight. One resurfaced segment shows Diddy speak about spending 48 hours alone with a young Justin Bieber, describing it as every young artist's dream, yet noticeably avoiding any clear explanation of what actually took place. At the time, it might have sounded like industry mentorship, but now, with everything else being discussed, that lack of detail feels more like a gap than a choice. And once that thought settles in, it naturally leads to a more uncomfortable question. What kind of guidance requires that level of privacy in the first place? Then the lens shifts again, this time toward Usher, who openly shared that he lived with Diddy when he was young, describing the environment as intense and at moments unsettling enough that he later admitted he would never want his own child placed in a similar situation.
And I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy thing. Now, that was L.A. Reid's idea, right? We're sending you
New
over
York
to something
City.
called Puffy Flavor Camp.
There you go.
To learn
Flavor Camp.
Yeah,
Flavor
that's what it
Camp.
was called. And you're going to go to Puff Daddy's. He's going
In the 90s, do you understand what that's like?
Puffy's place was like just filled with like nonstop, right?
No, not really. I
Come
mean,
on.
but hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you
I
seeing?
went there to see the lifestyle,
Right.
And I saw it, and it was, but I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild.
Dad, now, would you ever send your kid to Puffy Camp?
Hell no.
That statement alone doesn't confirm anything specific, but it plants a seed that's difficult to ignore, especially when it comes from someone who was actually there. And here's where the timeline starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern forming in slow motion. Because when you bring it back to Ava, a young figure introduced under unclear circumstances, briefly visible, then suddenly gone, it begins to mirror the same kind of unanswered gaps that keep appearing in these stories. Then, just as curiosity begins to peak, a live stream surfaces with someone claiming to be her, making serious accusations that ripple across the internet almost instantly. Of course, people were quick to question its authenticity. Fake accounts, attention seekers, even AI-generated content have blurred the line between real and fabricated so many times before. But what stood out wasn't whether everyone believed it. It was that a large number of people didn't dismiss it either. And that hesitation, that pause before disbelief, is where the tension really starts to build. Because alongside that moment, voices like Ali Carter have been referenced in online discussions, with claims and stories that, according to some, echo similar environments. Descriptions of being moved between spaces, placed in rooms with influential individuals, and feeling more like an object than a person. None of it is confirmed here, but the parallels are what keep people paying attention.
Today we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the Act.
And just when it feels like the story couldn't expand any further, it collides with something even larger, the release of documents tied to Jeffrey Epstein. In 2026, when pages of files, emails, and logs were finally made public, many expected clarity, something concrete that would settle years of speculation. Instead, what they found were heavy redactions, missing sections, and names hidden behind black ink, creating the opposite effect. Because sometimes, what's removed from a story ends up speaking louder than what's left behind. And that silence is exactly what keeps people looking for answers. So after everything that's surfaced, everything that's been hinted at, you're left staring at one uncomfortable question: did we actually get the truth, or just a version of it carefully shaped for the public to consume? Because when those Epstein-related documents finally dropped, people expected clarity, something solid they could point to and say, this explains it. Instead, what they found were pages filled with redactions, entire sections missing, names concealed behind thick black lines that only seemed to raise more suspicion than they settled. Around the same time, online chatter started circling around political figures like Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, with speculation suggesting internal disagreements over how the case was being handled, but none of it clearly confirmed, which only added another layer of uncertainty to an already murky situation. And when information feels filtered, people naturally begin to question what didn't make it onto the page. That's exactly why voices like Ali Carter have resonated so strongly in these discussions, especially when she openly pushed the idea that if names exist, they should be revealed entirely, not partially hidden, because incomplete truths don't bring closure, they extend the mystery. That sentiment alone struck a nerve, because it reflects what a lot of people were already thinking but couldn't quite articulate. Then when you place Diddy and Jeffrey Epstein side by side, not as a confirmed link, but as figures who reportedly moved within elite, highly exclusive circles, the parallels people point out start to feel harder to dismiss. Similar environments, similar levels of access, similar patterns of privacy that keep outsiders at a distance. And once that comparison enters the conversation, a new question quietly takes its place. If those worlds ever brushed against each other, even indirectly, who else might have crossed that invisible line without anyone noticing at the time? Now step back and look at the full picture, because this is where it all starts to feel less like isolated moments and more like fragments of a larger, incomplete puzzle. A young girl introduced without a clear history, later appearing in older photos that challenge the timeline. A sudden disappearance that was never fully explained. A leaked call that sparked theories about hidden meaning. Long-standing stories of Diddy being around young talent, combined with reflections from Usher that hinted at an environment he wouldn't want repeated. Separate voices describing situations that, whether verified or not, echo similar themes. And finally, a document release that was supposed to answer everything, yet somehow left even more uncertainty behind. When you line those pieces up, the picture doesn't become clearer, it becomes more complicated. And at the center of all of it is Ava, a name that keeps resurfacing without ever fully stepping into the light. Because here's the part nobody can answer yet. If she were to come forward with something concrete, timestamps, context, undeniable proof, would it confirm what people fear or completely rewrite the narrative we think we understand? Until that moment comes, all that exists are questions, patterns, and a growing sense that something about this story refuses to settle. So now it shifts to you. Was that adoption story exactly what it appeared to be? Or could it have been something designed to look simple on the surface? Why do earlier images suggest a longer history than what was presented? What explains the sudden silence that followed her introduction? And if even a fraction of these environments were as intense as described, who else might have been present without ever being named? Some stories fade with time, but this one keeps pulling people back in piece by piece as if it's still waiting for something to be uncovered. Comment below with what you think is really going on. Leave a like if this gave you chills, and subscribe, plus turn on notifications if you want to see more Hollywood secrets.